Okay, so here we are. Here we are with our file with our corrections made, right? That's the step you're working on. If you are still working on your corrections and you want to follow along here, that's fine. I'm going to show you how to do the colorization steps so that they work independently of the corrections you've made. Okay, if we follow the instructions as listed here, it shows a few different options of making color adjustments. We'll take a look at those, okay? So here's the colorization instructions. You can download this PDF by just clicking on the link. It will open up the link here, and you can either step through this or you can, I guess there's not a download option for this one, but that's okay. Okay, so you need to have, this says you need to have your corrections done first, and you should have your corrections done first. One thing to note on the corrections, after you actually are done repairing the photo, there are some further steps of adjusting the quality of the image, okay? So there's some steps for doing sharpening, noise reduction, adding some contrast, and stuff like that. So make sure you do those. Those help with the overall quality of the image, and it kind of takes it from being like kind of a repaired photo to actually having some contrast and stuff like that. Okay, so it ends up being a lot higher quality. So, but what we want to do is we want to start with our repair group. Okay, everything that we've done for repairs should be in this repair group. So I should be able to, when I'm looking at your files, just be able to turn this off, and I can see right there all the corrections you've made, which end up being quite a bit, right? Okay, so after you have completed your corrections and you're ready to do your colorization, you can follow the steps here. Okay, so the first step in this document is to add color to the face. And how I'm going to start off with this is I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to call this colorizing. And then the repair layer, I can take everything in this group and duplicate it. So with the repair group selected, I can press Command J and it will duplicate everything in that group. Okay? And then on a Mac, I can control click. You can right click in this lab, or you can also right click on a Windows machine. You can take that, and we want to merge the group. So that will take all those separate layers that are in the group and put it into one layer. Okay, so we're going to merge this group and call this the repair copy. So this is one layer that has all those corrections in it, and that's what we'll be adding the color to. Okay? So this first step says to make a loose selection around the face, around the area to be colorized, and then press Command J to copy that into its own layer. So I'm just going to use the elliptical marquee tool. I'm going to kind of loosely highlight the face, making sure to get the top of the head, the neck, because that'll get the same color, and the ears in there. And with that, I'll press Command J, and it duplicates what I had selected, right? So now I have a layer that loosely shows the face. Okay. Then it says name the layer something meaningful, i.e. face. So we'll call this face. Okay. And it says command click on the layer to reload the selection. So I'm going to command click, and what that does is all the pixels in this layer is just like pressing Command A. It will select all the pixels in that layer. So I've reselected it. And it says to bring up the fill dialog box with Shift F5. I'm just going to go to Edit Fill. You have to have the layer selected to do this. Edit Fill. Okay, and it brings up this Fill dialog box. Okay, we want to fill the contents with a color. Okay, I'm going to go to Fill, and in this drop down here, I'll select Color, and it should bring up this color picker. Okay, and it says to use a specific color. It says to type face 96. It is just a happy accident that face 96 actually brings up a Caucasian skin tone, okay? Don't expect to type face 72 or face 48 and for it to actually come up with a skin tone, okay? It probably won't. This is a hexadecimal code. Face means absolutely nothing as far as being tied to the color. Because see, I typed face and it has a blue color, okay? It's just a happy accident. Okay, but it says to use face 96 right there, which we have. And we're going to hit OK. And then for the blending mode, it says to select. This can be adjusted using blending mode's opacity later. Oops, zooming in. Make sure the opacity is 100% and the blending mode to color. Okay, so it says to set the blending mode to color and opacity to 100%. Okay, so we know I selected that face 96, that facial color tone. When I did this, I am setting the blending mode for this layer to color and the opacity for this layer to 100%. Okay, so I do that step and it adds this kind of orange tone to the area that I had selected, right? Okay, so what do I want to do now? Well, obviously, I don't want this facial tone to be on the jacket or on the background. So I would add a mask. And inside that mask, I would paint with my black brush to get rid of that color wherever I don't want the color. And I am very loosely doing this right now for instructional purposes. Okay, and then you want to make sure when you're doing this that you go in and remove the color from the eyes. Okay, we'll add a separate color in for the eyes, and we don't want the whites of his eyes to actually be yellow. Okay, so very loosely, I didn't really go around the edges very carefully or anything like that. But so now we have kind of this facial tone. It looks a little bit better on my screen, but it looks quite orange here. So what we may want to do at this point is bring the opacity of the color layer down a little bit to get it to be a little bit more of a natural skin tone. We may change the blending mode at this point. However, now, because we selected color blending mode when we were filling it, we're starting to stack blending modes, which can add a bunch of confusion. So I'm not actually going to choose a different blending mode at this point. But you can see how that method can add some color to the face, right? And the instructions say to use a blending mode of normal with the opacity of 42%. So I'll bring it down by 42%. Okay, and it's a somewhat natural skin tone. Okay, and you could do this method for the rest of the items in the image, for his hair, for his eyes, for his jacket. However, I don't like this method. The reason why I don't like this method is, as we can see, if I turn all the other layers off, there are contrast and lines in this layer. For a layer that should only be adding color to the image, it's actually changing part of the picture because it has contrast detail in it, right? So if I were to go in here and make some edits to the background image, okay, just for fun, what if I wanted this guy to have a third eye? Okay, and I did this and I made a third eye for him. Notice that because this layer did not include that third eye when we created it, the edit that I've made to the layer underneath it doesn't show up as bright as the rest of the image. That's because this image is actually changing some of the contrast. So if you're making correction edits after you've done this method to add color to the image, it's not good. You have to go through and recolorize it again for it to work well. So I don't prefer this method. It's in here for instructional purposes, but I'm going to go on to the next method and show you how to do a different method. Okay, so I'll call this face fill method. Okay. Now I'm going to make a new layer. I'll call this face dash paints method. Okay, this is a little bit more optimal way of adding color to an image. And so again, we're starting off here with our corrections, no color in it yet. But let's say I want to add color to this. I could go into my color picker down here in the bottom left. Go ahead and pick my face 96 color. So I have a brush now. If I press B, I have a brush with that color selected, and I could go in with a brush and make my brush bigger here. B for brush. Yep. Or you can just select it over here. B for brush, and I could go in and paint with my brush over the face. I'm adding the same color that we used for the fill method, using that color to actually paint in over the face. Okay, obviously, because I have a normal blending mode at 100% opacity, it is just filling in those pixels with the color. Okay, now remember, when we were doing the fill method, we told it to use color as the blending mode. Okay, so very similarly, now that I've painted my colors in, I could go to my blending mode options here and change it from normal to color. Okay, voila. What it's doing is it's adding only color to the pixels beneath and not stuff like contrast or filling the pixels. Okay, so it's allowing me to see the pixels underneath, except for it's applying this color to the pixels. Okay, now you can't apply color to pixels that are 100% white, because that is the brightest color available, and you can't apply color to things that are 100% black, because that's the darkest color available. But everything in between gets a shade of this color that I selected. Okay, and the nice thing about this method, and I'll go ahead and drop this down to the 42% that the instructions had. Now in this method, I do still need to add a blending or a mask, and I do still need to whoops, what did I do here? I did something. Oh, I turned off my repair layer. And this one I changed the opacity when I meant to change the opacity here. I'm going to drop this down to the 42%. And I kind of get that kind of natural color again, and I would still have to go in with my mask and kind of erase the color where it is not on the skin, and mask out the color from the eyes, etc. Okay, so I still have to do the masking steps. We will always have to do the masking steps no matter which method we choose here. Okay, so great. Now if I make a third eye for our guy here, duplicate his eye and move it up into the middle of his forehead. Okay, and notice that this eye retains full contrast. It's not faded out like the previous method of doing it was. Okay, it's not, let me go ahead and switch these out so you can see. See how this is faded? When I do this colorizing method, it's not faded. Okay, so it is allowing us to see all the pixels underneath. It's not actually adding any contrast or detail to the image that overwrites the repair layers beneath. Can we all see why this is a slightly better method of adding color to the image? Because it still lets us make further corrections without having to redo the color. Okay? And this method works great. However, if I think I didn't do a good job in here and say, let's say, oh, I forgot to add color to the ear. Let me go in real quick and add color to the ear. If I want to add color to the ear, and I've gotten rid of that color, what's the best way to get that color back? Anybody have any suggestions? How do I get that color back? The dropper tool? Okay. So I'm going to grab my dropper tool. There it is. And what does the dropper tool do? The dropper tool selects the color that you click when I'm in here. So I'm going to grab this color right here. I've got it selected. Okay, and I'm still in that layer, so I can go back in with my brush tool and add color. I'm clicking here, I'm doing it, I'm adding color into the ear. How come my color isn't showing up? Anybody know? Anybody know?
Because you're on the layer where it says that it's already all filled in?
Nope. Nope. Okay, good suggestion, good idea. Typically you would use the dropper tool. However, since I originally filled in this layer, I dropped the opacity to 42%. I changed the blending mode to color, okay? When I use the dropper tool, I'm not selecting. Okay, so I've got to go back and change this to normal. Got to go back and change it to 100%. When I used the color tool, I was not selecting this color. I was selecting the color as it appeared after I dropped the opacity and after I changed the blending mode. So if I really want to get this color again, I've got to go back in, change my blending mode to normal. I've got to change my opacity to 100%. Then I can use my dropper tool, okay, and go back in. Oh, voila, I am adding some color back into the ear now and it's actually working. Okay, but I've got to do those other somewhat annoying steps and then I will have to go back and change my blending mode back to color and my opacity back to 42 in order to edit the color from that layer. Okay, so can we see why this might not also be the optimal way of adding color into an image? Okay, so let me show you my preferred method of adding color to an image. And again, it's Photoshop. There are probably anywhere from 5 to 20 different ways of doing all of this stuff. So after working with it, you've just got to pick what you feel is best for you. So I have those layers turned off. Now what I'm going to do to add color this time is I'm going to choose this little icon down here. Let me fix my screen so you guys can actually see what I'm doing on the projector here. Okay, this icon right here. If I hover over this, this says create a new fill or adjustment layer. Okay, so I'm going to add an adjustment layer on top of my repair copy. Let me just go ahead and move these out of the way so that they aren't distracting. Okay. Okay, so I have that repair copy, and this is what I'm working with inside my color group. Okay, so I'm going to add an adjustment layer on top of this, and I'm going to choose solid color. Solid color, okay. This already has my previous color selected, but I would choose whatever color I want. Maybe I'm going to make this guy the Joker, so I'm going to choose green this time. Actually, we'll stick with the color I was using so that we can compare what we're doing here. Okay, so we'll choose that color. And now notice I have added a layer that's all one color. Okay, what do we do next to apply this color to our face? We've done it in both of the previous steps. Change the blending mode from normal to color. Okay, blending mode is normal to color. Okay, and obviously this layer is adding color to all of the image because nothing is masked out. What the solid color layer does is it adds a layer of solid color. But fortunately in Photoshop we have masks, and I'm actually going to press Command I. Notice my mask is all white right now. As we've learned previously, white reveals, black hides. So I'm going to press Command I, and all that does is it changes the color of the mask from white to black. It hides everything, okay? But I can take a brush, a white brush here, with my mask selected, and I can paint in, and it's not showing up, but I do have white right here as the color I'm using. So I can go in, and anywhere that I want this color to be applied, very similarly as painting before, I can just paint it right in where I want it to be, right? And I think we had this set at 42 for the opacity before. Okay, I can go in and I can paint this in wherever I want that color to be. Okay, and I can furthermore just kind of loosely fill this in. Okay, and because I am painting this in with the mask, if I miss the ear and I need to add color back into the ear, do I need to go get my eyedropper tool and paint it back into the canvas? No, the color is already there. All I need to do is switch over from black to white on my paintbrush. And as we know with a mask, white reveals, and I just need to paint it in. And I've got it, right? If I want to change what color this is, I just double click on this and I can drag this around and change what the color is. I don't need to go back and change my blending mode to normal, change my opacity to 100% to edit what this color is doing. Okay? So this is my preferred method of adding color to a photo. And again, all that is adding a blending mode of solid color, masking everything out, and then just kind of painting it in where you need it to be. Okay? Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions of how to do that part of it? Okay, so then you want to go in and do the following steps on the eyes, on the jacket, etc. Now, one thing I will note is, okay, I call this color fill. I'm just going to call this skin. Okay. Here's how I recommend organizing these layers. If I have a layer that is skin, and then I'm going to fill in the background, even though they should not be overlapping, I would make the background layer beneath. Okay. I would keep them in order of appearance. So probably the eyes will be above the skin layer. A little bit later on in the instructions, we're going to add a little bit of pink tint to the lips and to the cheeks to make it look like it's like a natural face tone. Okay, put those on top of the skin layer, because otherwise the skin layer might be kind of obscuring what it's doing. Okay, and anything in the background will be beneath it. So I would make another solid color layer. Maybe I have blue in the background here. I'll call this my background. Okay, and then I would invert my mask and go in and paint my blue color into the background. And then for blending modes, a lot of these say color. There are 3 good blending modes that can be used here. Color is one of them. Sometimes if it's a somewhat brighter background, color is not ideal. Because notice the color is kind of making the shadows look not quite natural. Okay. Darken will sometimes work. However, darken does darken the image. So sometimes that one you want to drop the opacity quite low. Multiply can work here. Okay, and that also darkens the image. Notice how these are separated. Your blending modes are separated into groups. All of these under the darken one darken the image. All of these under the lighten one will lighten it. And all of these are kind of a mixture of the 2 overlays. Okay, but darken, multiply, color burn, overlay, and color are good ones. Okay, those will usually give you, between one of them, will give you a reasonable blend of color into the image. And I'm kind of liking how color burn works here. It's applying the color, it's darkening some of the areas, and the shadows look pretty natural for this part of the image. And then you could try overlay too, which I think kind of makes it a little bit too bright. So for this one, I might choose color burn. Okay, but since it's my background, it will go underneath it. Now for the cheeks, the pink in the cheeks, you want to do solid color layer above the face. Then we'll paint the pink in, and this is going to be like less than 10% opacity when we add this in. Okay, so, unless you want him to look like a clown. Some people have made him look like Joker or a cross-dresser, however you want to do it. Okay, bring the opacity way down. And it's very subtle, but stuff like this can add, a real hint of actual like flesh tone colors to an image. Okay, so keep them in order. I do recommend to use the solid color method, and that covers it. Make sure when you're doing the eyes, you take out the color in the pupils. That should be black. Any questions? Okay, so I've recorded that. I will post that online here. and that will be available to you.